We're here in court today. We got an $11 million settlement on behalf of the family of Calvin Majette and his wife Temika Pleas, who were unfortunately in a high-speed chase. They were hit by a car that was trying to flee from the police. The person who was fleeing was wanted for forgery, fraud, maybe a suspended driver's license. It was not a public safety hazard. And that person who was fleeing ran through an intersection at a light and killed Mr. Majette, unfortunately, and caused severe injuries to Ms. Pleas. And Ms. Pleas had severe brain injuries, lost a spleen, had other injuries along with that. And thank God today this case has been settled, and we held the police department and the city accountable. And they wanted to be, they wanted to come forward to make sure that they took care of this family with the injuries, and we're thankful that they did. We think there are lessons learned, and we think that in the future there may be better policy that comes forward as a result of these injuries to the family. Mr. Majette had 3 children that he was raising. They were blue-collar, middle-class Portsmouth family, and hopefully now that this is resolved, they'll have some resources to be able to take care of the family, to get Ms. Majette back healthy again, and to make sure we take care of his children, who were the love of his life. And it was funny this morning talking to Ms. Pleas after we talked about everything and it was resolved, and she looked at me and she said, I just want my husband back. And unfortunately, she's not going to get her husband back. So I know folks may think this is a great resolution, but for her, this still won't end the pain that she continues to feel each and every day without her best friend and her husband with her. And if you have any questions, these 2 guys have it, Mr. Benny Eisen, Mr. Bright. I got to run. Y'all good? All right.
You're going to Richmond. He's going to save the world.
Yeah.
Kevin went up there. You might want to say that this is a year ago to next week, next Monday.
Yeah, this.
Don, that's yours.
That's mine. That's mine. Good morning, Kevin Beniazin. Yeah, we're here today for the settlement that Mr. Scott mentioned. That the incident happened just less than a year ago. It was a year ago last week, and so next week, excuse me. And the circumstances of the settlement, obviously, as Mr. Don mentioned, or Mr. Scott had mentioned, we're grateful that the city came forward and discussed resolving this case with us. This family will frankly, unfortunately, never be the same, but we're hopeful that this will be the first step in recovery for them, not only for the children, but also for Ms. Pleas, in what will be a long road, having to live through the trauma that this incident caused. So we'll take any questions you guys have.
Sure. Can you discuss a little bit more about the long-term impact to Ms. Pleas and what she's kind of suffering day to day?
Yes, ma'am. So Ms. Pleas suffered a horrendous brain injury, but beyond that, she suffered multiple orthopedic injuries, fractures, and broken bones, and lost a spleen. But most importantly, or most tragically, her brain injury is something that is going to impact her for the rest of her life. You know, if you talk to doctors, and we've gotten her evaluated by some of the best in the Commonwealth and some of the best in the country, when you get to the point of a year post-injury with traumatic brain injuries, for the most part, you're as good as you're going to get. And for Ms. Pleas, she's still recovering, and we're hopeful that she'll continue to receive the therapy, and these funds, as a result of this settlement, will help her receive the therapy and the care that she needs to try and get as good as she possibly can get. But at this point, we're uncertain that that'll ever get back to the Ms. Pleas that got into her car that morning with her husband. And I think that's one of the most tragic parts about this incident, is that not only did these 3 children lose their father, but they lost a mother that they knew. That woman isn't the same that got into the car that morning, and we hope that through care and recovery and treatment that she'll get back to as close as she can possibly get, but no amount of money will ever restore who that woman was when she got into that car.
Kind of speak to the life lessons that the city, that you mentioned the city has now learned following this.
Well, I think, you know, the way we got here is, I think the city understood and understands that performing high-speed chases in highly populated areas, when you're chasing someone who doesn't present a danger to the public to begin with, is bad policy to begin with. And I don't think that that's something new that the city learned as a result of this case. I think that's something that the city understood prior to this case. But this demonstrates why that policy exists and why it's so important that the city, not only here but across the Commonwealth, ensure that they enforce that policy, train that policy, instill that policy in all of their officers so that when they're faced with those circumstances, we don't have another circumstance where we're losing a husband and we're losing a wife, or children are losing their parents. And so our hope is that this case will demonstrate to the city and other municipalities across the Commonwealth that it's critically important that they train, and it's critically important that they enforce the policies that we all know are just common sense.
What were they doing at the time?
The family?
Yeah, was it just the two of them in the car?
It was. They were actually coming back from getting groceries that morning, and that's something that they did together and enjoyed.
In the morning?
It was. Well, the police chase started about 11 a.m., and so the family had Miss Pleas and Mr. Majette were actually coming home, on their way home, and the collision happened very close to their home, actually. And so they're coming home from a grocery shopping run, just like we all do every Saturday or Sunday.
What did he do for a living?
Mr. Majette, Jeffrey?
Mr. Majette had a new job. I'm trying to think exactly what it is. She works making, Miss Pleas made dolls for children for hospital stays, and she's been working there for probably 11 years doing that. Mr. Majette's employer, and I'm trying to think of his name, just loved Mr. Majette and his work ethic. And so he was working, she was working, and they both lost that income now. She can't work anymore. And so this money is intended to help supplement the family. The three young children, of course, need help. And the sister of Miss Pleas is a registered nurse here in getting trained actually to finish her RN. And she has stepped up to help take care of not only her sister, but the three children. I think it needs to be said that Burl Stromberg, the city attorney for Portsmouth, initiated these discussions. And the city recognized the chase itself probably violated a number of civil rights rules, and the city had limited insurance at points in time that would apply to this case. And so Burl Stromberg, I think, very, very helpful in trying to make sure the insurance company realized that the city of Portsmouth might be naked when it comes to a verdict that could be of more than their carrier could cover. And because of his work, all of the parties got together, and over the last 60 days, we were able to come to this resolution.
Was the city the only defendant in the case?
The city and the officer. And the city has an insurance policy that covers them, joined up with a whole bunch of other municipalities around the Commonwealth. And so the insurance carrier, with lawyers both here in Norfolk and in Richmond, have been negotiating with us for these last 60 days.
And is that officer still with the department?
You'll have to ask the city that. I know that there was discussions early on. Remember, this happened 11 months and 3 weeks ago. So I know that they knew that the chase itself for a misdemeanor in the middle of the city at 90 miles an hour, and there is a video, is up to 90 miles an hour. You just don't do that in the city, chasing someone unless it's a hostage situation or someone risking a lot of other citizens. That's the problem with this type of chase. Sometimes you just say, wait, we'll get them on another day. They knew the woman's name that they were chasing, they knew her address, they knew her car, and that's why you don't do a high-speed chase in the city.
As you mentioned, it comes at a pretty timely time, going on a year. So can you just talk to the emotion of a year later from that crash and now having this suit to help the family?
Well, it's been interesting. The last 3 days we've been with the family, and Miss Pleas still suffers from post-traumatic stress just from the loss of her husband. Remember, she was unconscious at the scene with multiple internal injuries. She didn't find out till later that her husband had passed away. And so it happened suddenly. She has no idea what happened because they were broadsided. And so her emotional state, separate and apart from her brain injury, is fragile. She cries often. I saw a brief smile this morning when I told her to stop worrying about taking care of her children. The three children will be taken care of for the rest of their life. and she will never have to worry about being able to afford her medical care. And so she was a very frugal, conservative woman, and the children were never allowed to spend money frivolously, and we don't intend her to do that now. But all of the money for the family will be in trust for the 3 children and in trust for Ms. Pleas, so that there'll be decisions made with the help of a bank trustee to make sure that the money goes where it's supposed to go. It won't bring her back. The emotional healing hopefully will get better, but her brain injury and cognitive function will never be normal. And when you put that on top of a heavy overlay of a post-traumatic stress, it's difficult. But we think that she's much better than when we first started talking to her last year. She's starting to understand that she thinks that she's been protected and her children have been protected, and that's really all she's worried about. As Kevin said, she misses her husband. I mean, they did a lot together raising these children. When you lose a husband and a father, it has a profound long-term effect. The children are doing well, but they know that their mother's not the same, and fortunately for them, they have a sister that lives right with them. They've moved in together effective today, and so that her sister can help raise the children with her. Kevin, I don't know.
How old are the kids now?
18, 15,
15.
and 12.
18, 15, and 12?
I believe so. They all are still living at home, and hopefully we'll get the oldest off to college and won't have to worry about the tuition at least, and she knows that.
Do you know how fast the car was going when it hit them?
The chase in the police vehicle was up to 90 miles an hour.
But
So
you didn't find out what the...
did not get the black box from the car that struck, but I know that they were 10 to 15 minutes in the city at speeds over 90, 95 when the accident actually happened.
What caused the chase to start? What made the officer start chasing?
The officer saw the woman in a store, thought that he recognized her for some reason, went out to his vehicle and waited for the woman to come outside the store. She got into a car. He traced the license plates. License plates came back to her. She was wanted for a misdemeanor here in Portsmouth, and so he pulled up lights behind her. She panicked and fled. She had a passenger, and why people panic and flee, I don't know. I don't know the circumstances of why she didn't want to talk to the police, but once she pulled out, when you have a misdemeanor and you know who the woman is, you know her address and you know her car, officers through training are told, don't get into a high-speed trace. Call ahead. There's lots of other things they can do. We hired 2 of the best police experts in the country, one that had written the book and one that had trained 50 police departments on these types of things. So the city knew that we had the best experts that you could get in the country to discuss why they shouldn't have done this. But quite frankly, the city attorney's office knew, Mr. Stromberg in our first meeting knew that it was a bad chase. So the question was, could we resolve it? And would they be throwing up defenses? And would the insurance company be on the hook for all of their money? Or would the city be on the hook for money above their policy? And so we were able to resolve it at the exact policy number that the city of Portsmouth had. And that was fortunate. Otherwise, this would have gone on for a couple of years, and she would not have gotten her treatment.